And welcome back to Buzz on Vets. I'm your co-host, Captain Rick Hoffman, and I'm here with three co-hosts. I don't know, we've outnumbered the guests for whatever reason. Ron, owner of Veterans United, thank you so much for hosting us today.
Thank you.
Megan, owner of Maloney Associates, thank you so much for being here today. Keith, good to see you again.
Good to
Keith
see you.
Green, and of course, Phil, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
We've had a pretty good fun day today, and we've had a chance to get to meet everybody. Keith, talk a little bit about your service.
Well, I was enlisted sailor, joined in 1975, and scraped together a bachelor's degree by 1984. And then I went to OCS, graduated from OCS in '84, and then I went to 3 ships in a row as a surface warfare officer, communications officer, and then I went directly to a department head tour as chief engineer on a gas turbine frigate. Made the mistake of qualifying as a steam 1,200-pound steam engineer while I was communications officer. So that led me to my first department head tour. And then after that, I went to be exol on a hydrofoil out of Key West, USS Gemini. And following that tour, I became the training officer in Desron 8 in Mayport and the import training officer. And then my last tour was the telephone officer at NAS Jacksonville.
Well, I have to laugh. You and I spent a lot of time in Mayport bouncing around me. But we missed. It wasn't until 4 years ago that we finally met.
Right.
After having really almost a shared experience. Yeah. 1975 was a very, very interesting time for a young African-American man to join the Navy.
Yes, it was.
We were still doing race riots.
Yes, it was.
We did not do a good job of transitioning.
Some of that continued on until the early 80s. As a matter of fact, there was a racial incident on the USS Boone after I left my first tour, which I can't get anybody to talk to me about, but it was one of those op-rep things where it was a pretty interesting. But yeah, 75, I came in as a mineman, and my first tour was in Charleston, South Carolina, Mineman A School.
Yeah.
And that was not the most pleasant experience I had. I graduated number 2 in my class, but there's still some lingering attitudes about black sailors that rubbed off on my my schooling.
After you and I met a few years ago, and after I've had a chance to read your books, really good. He recounted his experience as a black officer in what was still then a very white Navy. My first, when I took command of Way City, is the first time I ever served with women at sea. And we had done an equally poor job of preparing the services for that eventuality. Going to sea is hard. Going to sea with all these other challenges and mixed messages from leadership and mixed tool set for the commanding officer. It was an interesting time. You and I could talk about that later. But one of the critical things, the reason we're here, not to dwell on the challenges of the past, but to dwell on the promises of the future. We celebrated our 250th anniversary. It is quite momentous. As we discussed before, that very few nations reach that. Even the old countries are technically newer than us.
Yes.
Okay, with exceptions of China, but they have different, But so 250 years. What does that mean to you, Keith?
Well, I've been doing a lot of reflecting on the history of the Navy over the last few years. And I've been going back reading some dissertations and some articles and some books. And I've seemed to indicate or find that there's patterns of progress and then regression, progress and then regression. So we seem to have that on like a 20, 25-year cycle. 1919, the Navy banned the first enlistment of all black sailors. And then they drove all of the existing sailors in outside of the messman's branch from almost 6,000 down to 441 by the time 1933 rolled around. So that was a dark period in the Navy's history. Wasn't until 1942 that you had a black sailor that come in the Navy and be in a branch outside the messman's branch. So we had a lot of progress during the Zumwalt era. We kind of went back and forth in the 70s and 80s, and then during the 90s and so forth. But the last 10, 12 years have been a little bit different, interesting.
Yeah. Well, again, the uniform sentiment of our groups so far have been hope for the future.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Talking to them about a moment ago, you told us what you thought. Let's say it again.
So I did 6 years in the Army, go Army, and it was the best time of my life because it taught me so much that I've transitioned into the civilian world. And I think everybody, especially now, needs to do time in military because we don't know what freedom is until we've actually stood behind someone and defended it. Mm-hmm. And so anybody that is thinking about it, needs to go. I'm recruiting for the Army, not Navy. But,
Good luck here in Jacksonville.
well, Army looks better.
I don't know. You ever walk down the streets of Boston in whites? I would beg to differ.
I don't have whites.
My point exactly.
Well, I think we should all encourage more people to join. It's the best country. It's the best experience. And if we're going to do 250 more, we need to be militarily strong.
Ron, any further things to reflect on?
Well, it's kind of interesting to me. She was mentioning freedom, and one of the things that we don't, I think, truly appreciate as a nation is the freedoms we have. So, when I was a naval flight officer, I went to SEER school, Survive, Evade, Resist, Escape, POW school.
Yeah.
And when they throw you into that prison and they take away and the way they treat you, you truly, I think, you get to understand what real freedom is like. And I don't think most people really get to understand that until you have a lot of your liberties stripped away. And in terms of the 250th, I mean, it's amazing how much we have as a country, the liberties, and I'm hoping that this will continue in the future. But I mean, after that school, I just was so appreciative of what we have as a country that, I didn't appreciate it until I was out of that school, and I really learned how bad it can be, when you're taken away. All those liberties and freedoms are taken away. So I'm just happy that there we are, we've gotten to this point, and I'm hoping for the future.
I didn't need SEER school to learn that. I was a freshman at the Citadel in 1971.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Yeah. So, Phil, talk to us a little bit about your thoughts.
So, I wasn't going to talk about this, but this America's 250 this year was the last holiday I got to celebrate with my dad. He just passed away last week. So, talking to him about my service and being gone, and the sacrifices we made, to support our families and the things we did. He was really proud of me, and just it just meant a lot to have that moment to him, and to have my dad and I, we weren't talkers.
Yeah.
So, it was more grunts and then long silent car rides. But in the last few months of his life, he had cancer. We were able to share some stories and talk about some real things, which I'll be forever grateful for.
To your dad.
Cheers.
Thank you. Yeah, Cheers.
Cheers.
That's a gift.
Well, one other thing I'd like to highlight on my other podcast is that not all who served are in uniform. And that none of us could do what we do without our spouses, without our families behind us. So cheers to our families.
Cheers to families.
And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And that's Captain Rick. Most of you don't realize this, but I'm one of the few surface warfare officers with a call sign. I was called Buzz Lightyear when I was the operations officer. It was 30 years ago, so give me a break. I had a high and tight. Yeah. So on USS Enterprise, Marty Channing, the CO, retired Vice Admiral, gave me the call sign Buzz for Buzz Lightyear. So when Morgan says you're going to be Buzz on veterans, I say, how did you find that out? Turns out it's not related. Yeah. So cheers to everyone. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. Cheers.
When they leave us for battle, we await their return. When their embrace is gone, we imagine them with us. Some don't come back. We grieve. Some come back hurting. We help. Heroes survive. We honor them. Heroes fall. We remember them. 150,000 veterans live in Jacksonville. We serve them. We're the Military Affairs and Veterans Department, City of Jacksonville. Because of them, our light never dims.